الأسبوع الثالث من ورش العمل لبرنامج التحول الوطني. أسابيع مجهدة، وحريصين احنا في المركز الوطني لقياس أداء الأجهزة العامة وفي الورش بشكل عام إنه بأكبر قدر ممكن نثري محتوى البرنامج. هذه بداية لدعوة بعض السبجكت ماتر اكسبرت أصحاب الخبرة لتبادل الخبرات معهم. اليوم الدكتور روبرت كابلن هو أحد أعمدة أو أحد مؤسسين مجال البالانس سكور كاردز. قبل ما اسوي له مقدمه يعني بروبر انتروداكشن، حاب اقول يعني دعونا نستفيد من وقت الاسئله والاجوبه. يعني في النص ساعه الاخيره بيكون في فرصه للسؤال والجواب. قد تكون يعني نفضل ان تكون الاسئله والاجوبه باللغه الانجليزيه نظرا للغه الدكتور روبرت كابلن، لكن سنساعد في ترجمه بعض الاجابات والاسئله في حاله الحاجه الى السؤال باللغه العربيه. طبعا قبل تقديم الدكتور كابلن حاب اشكر شركه تليجرامز وكانت في هذه الرحله لتوفير شخص بهذه الخبره في هذا الوقت الهام لنسعى في جميع من التعلم من الكفاءات والموارد المختلفه الموجوده. طبعا دكتور روبرت كابلن نار على علم. Excuse me, Dr. Kaplan, I'll make the introduction in Arabic, maybe say a few words in English, but it is easier to express emotions and appreciation in Arabic. So I hope you can accept this. دكتور كابلن أحد مؤسسين هذا العلم الهام، وهو أحد الدكاترة يسمون دكاترة شرفيين الآن في جامعة هارفارد وهارفارد بزنس سكول. أوراقه العلمية في البالانس سكور كارد انتشرت انتشار هائل، وبني هذا المجال على العمل اللي بذله أثناء عمله في جامعة هارفارد وبعدها. He's a Martin Bowen Professor of Leadership Development, Emeritus at the Harvard Business School, and Chairman of Professional Practice at Palladium. He's also the inventor of Balance Score Card. I know you are here not to listen to me necessarily, but to listen to Dr. Kaplan. We value your time, Dr. Kaplan, and I'd like and honored to introduce you to the stage. Please help me or join me welcoming Dr. Kaplan.
Thank you very much. Well, this is a very exciting day for me to be here and see the activities going on in the kingdom. I'm actually been reading about it in the United States. Tom Friedman did a column in the New York Times describing some of the changes, a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, and the Deputy Crown Prince. And in both those articles, they were featuring and highlighting the work that you're currently engaged in. And it was really exciting to read about it and know how it really got started. I met in 3M here, maybe 2002, when I gave a talk in Jeddah. It was my first visit to the kingdom, and already Balance Scorecard was being implemented there in the municipality. And then as I was coming back, subsequently it was introduced by the Ministry of Labor. And I remember having meetings 3 and 4 years ago there, and thinking how wonderful it would be if we could extend that out into other ministries. At that point, I met Basil out there, and he said he's going to make it happen. It's his dream to see if we can bring strategy and performance management to the ministries and to the kingdom. And here we are at the beginning of 2016 to see this underway. So I've had a journey as well that with Dave Norton back in 1990, 1991. We first developed the concept of the Balance Scorecard, first article, 1992, on measures to drive performance. And as you can see, that we kept going, because we kept learning. After the first article, companies came to us, said, this looks interesting, can you help us try this out? And we did. And we learned from that, and we learned that strategy has to be the centerpiece when you do performance measurement, concepts of strategy maps and the like. And we're not just writing articles, series of books, most recent of which, the Execution Premium, in effect, it really brought together the work of hundreds of organizations that we learned about and learned from over those 18 to 20 years. And that fifth book, it has now become the centerpiece of the leading strategy execution system in the world. So there are many methodologies for how to formulate strategy. Some of the strategy ideas come from my colleagues at the Harvard Business School, Michael Porter, Clay Christensen, some of it is from people outside the school. So there are many, many frameworks for coming up with strategies. But there's really only one framework for taking strategies and making them happen and delivering results. And that is the strategy execution system that you see in this diagram, which starts in stage one with developing a strategy, which the kingdom has now done, which is establishment of the National Development Plan and goals. And you're now on the journey, and I greatly appreciate the whole lot of detailed work that you're now doing, which is really stage two. How do you take that strategy? How do you quantify the strategy? So it can be communicated and subsequently implemented? So I show you this to show that this is a journey, and the work you're doing is not the end result, but it enables the rest of the journey to continue. But so let me frame this down. I'm going to give you a few highlights of this journey. First, we have to set the journey in motion, and that's this issue of change. So in this diagram, we have various quotes that accumulated over the past 20 years, which says that the problem of strategy execution is perhaps the most difficult management challenge that around. There are many frameworks and there are many consultants that help organizations formulate and select strategies. We don't have to do that. The challenge is how do you deliver the results in the strategy? And that's what's hard. But that's where we do have knowledge today that we didn't have 20 years ago. How important is this? So several years ago, we did a survey of people on our online community at Palladium. We asked two questions. How many of you actually already have a formal strategy execution system in place? About half said yes, half no. This is higher than it is in the population at large, because in Palladium we are the strategy execution people, and so the people coming on our website would be more naturally inclined to be putting in a formal system. But then the second question is, how is your strategy working? And for those without a formal strategy execution system in place, we got the usual results. 70 to 80% of strategies do not deliver breakthrough performance. The interesting part was for those who said that they had a formal strategy execution system in place, the odds completely shift from 3 out of 10 to 7 out of 10. So it's not perfect. This is still hard. There are challenges. There are external dynamics that often prevent you from delivering all the results of your strategy. But imagine the power of a tool that can make this kind of a difference in the likelihood of success in implementing a strategy. What is it that causes strategies not to be implemented? Doesn't seem like it should be that hard. We did surveys with many organizations, found 4 big barriers. One is in the typical organization, very few people know what the strategy is. So maybe only the senior executive team. Why is this a problem? It is even though the senior executive team gets to deliberate and formulate and select the strategy, they don't execute the strategy. Strategy is executed by all the employees in the organization. If the employees do not know what the strategy is, it can't possibly work, particularly when you're implementing a new strategy. But people are going to keep doing what they've done before. If you want them to do something differently and better, they have to understand what that is, and what the expectation is of that new work. So this communication problem is a huge barrier to successful strategy implementation. Second, often the incentives are wrong. So senior managers may say, okay, we now have a 5-year strategy and we want to be successful in it, but they reward people for short-term financial performance or short-term operational performance. And this can't work. If you ask people, say, please deliver us A, but I'm going to measure you with B, you're going to get B. You're going to get what you measure. And so we have to get better at aligning incentive and reward systems to successful strategy execution. 3, strategy execution doesn't come for free. As we'll see at the end of my talk, that new strategy requires new capabilities. And new capabilities require spending money to build those capabilities. And yet most organizations, and particularly in the public sector, the budgets are not set with a view to the strategy. You know, you're just trying to handle operational details, keep the organization function, but they don't get the discretionary resources to build capabilities in people, in systems, in processes, and as a result, you can't implement new strategies that require new skills, new information, new processes. And then finally, management itself is the culprit. They spend very little time on operational issues. You know, fires are broken out, how do we put them out? We have to put out fires, so we have to deal with operational issues. But spending all your time during the year dealing only with operational issues means you're not monitoring and guiding the strategy. So any strategy execution system has to solve these 4 problems. All of this starts with leadership. So even though leadership is not one of the 6 stages in our execution model, it's the critical enabler. It's critical enabler. And for the 3 out of 10 organizations that end up failing in their strategy execution, almost all of them are due to poor leadership. That leadership does not offer adequate support and resources to this, or they get distracted and they don't stay the course. And what's hard is if the organization is already doing well. And one of the signs of great leadership is even when the organization is doing well, the sun is out, the music is playing, they're always worried. You know, what does the future hold? Where is the threat? Also, where is the opportunity? So we really need leadership to be looking ahead, scanning the horizon, doing a competitive analysis, whether it's at an organization level or a national level, to see opportunities and threats where a new strategy will be required. One of the great CEOs of corporations in the 20th century, Jack Welch of General Electric, had a great 20-year career there. And Jack talks about what he was always thinking about is change before change was forced on you. When you still have the resources to do it, and you still have your market position, leaders should embrace change, not be fearful of it. So what do we expect from leadership? This is a complex subject. We have a whole course at the Harvard Business School just on leadership, so I can't tell you all the secrets on this in a few minutes. But we have to think about 3 guidelines here for leadership and leading change. Is first being clear about where we want to go to, having a clear vision about what the future is. And I think the leaders of the country here have established an ambitious strategic direction for going after it. But 2 is we have to get everybody to come along. So 2 and 3 is hard. Communication. If we want to get to that destination, which is a stretch target and a big change from where we are today, we have to be able to communicate that vision and a strategy for implementing it, to all the people involved in implementing the strategy. And we have to motivate them so they want to do this. And the motivation is not just for money, as we'll see. You want to bring them along on the journey because they actually think it's exciting to get there, and they want to be part of that journey. And you're part of that journey right now in the work that you're doing. And so just to amplify this, in studies of U.S. organizations to find out which one is the best in establishing
strong leadership culture. The U.S. Marines end up being quite high on that list, often number one. Not a private sector company, but a government agency, U.S. military, the U.S. Marines. And part of what makes them truly effective is how much they communicate. Two of the first four organizations that implemented the balanced scorecard in 1992 to 1994, after our first article was written, I subsequently learned when I wrote case studies about them, were led by former U.S. Marine officers. That was an unusual result, because it's not that big a branch of our armed forces. When I asked them about it, and how did that influence the way they led and managed their private sector companies, they said, we are told as Marine officers, first we know that when the battle takes place, the general is not there. And whatever we plan, and we do a lot of planning, does not survive the first shot in a battle. And we can't have the troops calling us up and say, hey boss, it ain't working, what should we do now? The general is not there. And so the thing we count on is before we send any soldier into battle, every single soldier must know the mission and the objectives. And in the heat of battle, even though the battle plan is not going to go forward, they can regroup and reorganize and stay focused on achieving the mission and the objectives. And when these former Marine officers became CEOs of companies, they remembered their training. And they felt that they had 500, 5,000 employees. They wanted every single employee to understand the mission and the objectives. Because things change. And the head of a big oil company is not there in the middle of the night when a single employee is watching a $1 billion refinery. The CEO of the bank is not there when an important customer walks into a branch. They have to count on the employees understanding the importance of what they're doing to the overall organization's success. And so they were looking to think, how do we communicate this? How do we create that inspiration and be clear to every employee to understand what we're trying to accomplish? Because what we're trying to accomplish is really a big change. So many organizations don't have strong leadership, and they're not visionary. And so they spend all their time with small changes, putting out fires, and solving local problems. In the 1970s and 1980s, we learned a lot from the Japanese. They taught us about quality, management, and Six Sigma, and Lean. And that's proactive, trying to improve our processes on a continual basis. But it takes the existing processes and makes them better, faster, cheaper. But that's not a new strategy. That's staying within the existing strategy to be a little bit more productive and efficient. Re-engineering came in the 1990s, and it says, we're not organized correctly. We organized around our processes, but it was a one-time deal. We were not doing organized well to deliver good results for customers, so let's reorganize around it. But that was the end of the story. What we're talking about, what we're trying to accomplish, is first proactive and ongoing. We're trying to be able to introduce new strategies successfully so we can continue to respond to a very volatile and ever-changing world. Among the things I've talked about, some barriers to strategy execution, there are barriers to change. Starts at the top. We don't have good direction. What are we going to change to? Or you get a visionary leader, but doesn't bring the employees along, doesn't communicate, doesn't motivate them, and that doesn't work either. So the ideal thing, and this is kind of a good way to think about the metrics projects that we're engaged in, is we need visionary leadership who sees the future, needs of change, and a sense of urgency. But they can't do it alone. And this is where management tools, such as performance measurement, key indicators, initiatives, incentive plans, come in. And so the management tools that we're working on are a way of helping the leader achieve the vision for the organization. So just to amplify on this, and this gets back to the first barrier, Many organizations, as I already are out there, and they have recrafting mission statements, vision, and strategy, and you know the consultants who are out there that assist the senior executives in developing, their new strategies. Big long documents, 50 pages long, articulating the strategy. Separately, because of the Japanese quality movement, the employees are trying to do their jobs to make things better, faster, cheaper, using lean and quality management techniques. And occasionally they'll hear from the senior executives, we have a new strategy. We have a 5-year plan. Here's our goals. And the employees are kind of puzzled. First, they enjoy hearing from the executives, but they're asking the WIIFM question. What's in it for me? Why are you telling me this? I understand executives like to get together, hire outside consultants, and come up with strategic plans. How does it affect me, the person on the front lines, in a field office? What am I supposed to do differently or better as a result of that money you spent to come up with a new strategy? And this is that gap. 95% of the employees do not understand really what that strategy means, and certainly what it means to them. And that's why most strategies end up failing. And the beauty of what they're now engaged in, and where our approach, the balanced scorecard and measurement comes in, is it bridges this gap. If we can measure the strategy, get key indicators for what that strategy is, targets for that strategy, then we can think about initiatives that are going to drive the successful implementation of the strategy. Because if the initiatives can help us improve the key performance indicators, and we chose those key performance indicators wisely, which is the work you're now engaged in, as those indicators start to move in the correct direction and have sufficient magnitude, the strategy gets executed successfully. So this is the motivation and the big thing here is to take these wonderful word statements of the strategy, translate them into measures. We'll have objectives, more detailed, granular objectives, key indicators, the targets for those measures, where do we want to be in 5 years or 10 years, and then step back, which it would be in 2016, 2017. So we really do see the trajectory of breakthrough performance and the goals for strategic initiatives. And a lot of those, again, companies think strategy execution is to have a 50-page document of strategy and then a set of initiatives. You can't get there that way. The initiatives are not the strategy. They're there as a tool to help you perform better on the key indicators, which are the translation of the strategy into measurement. So as we've worked with many government agencies around the world, and the question comes in, we've never done this before. Why should the government adopt a private sector tool, initially a private sector tool like the balanced scorecard, for its work? First reason is first to get everybody on the same page. What is this ministry going to accomplish? And be clear, because to get beyond the words, take the ambiguity out of words. Same words can mean very different things to different people. Measures don't have ambiguity. When we take the words, translate them into key indicators, then we know exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish, and it creates a consensus around it. It helps you create alignment for all the different departments and groups, because then we're going to cascade high-level ministry measures down to departments within that, and so we get clarity there. We can use the measures to communicate to the employees. We answer the WIIFM question. The measures help the employees to understand what it is they can do to improve those metrics, which are derived from the strategy. The measures, as we'll see, also enable you to get feedback. How are we doing? Are we making progress on those measures? If all we have is word statements about the strategy, there's no quantitative indicator as to whether we're making progress or not on the strategy. And finally, I think most importantly, for for public sector, and I think for Saudi Arabia in particular, is the measures will be your contract with your citizens. You're putting a stake in the ground. This is how we're going to improve government services. This is how we're going to improve government performance. And this is scary because we haven't done this before. But ultimately, it's what offers some legitimacy to the government to show that they're actually delivering on a performance goal and making citizens' lives better. And this helps much more to have stability and support and legitimacy for any government. So just a quick case study in government. I learned about 4 years ago. South Korea has really been part of the economic miracle in the post-World War II period, with median income and GDP per capita has gone up by a factor of 10 in that period of 40 or 50 years. But there was one province in the southwest part of Korea that was left behind. On every major economic or socioeconomic statistic, it was 16th out of 16 in South Korea. Lowest output per capita, lowest income per capita, slowest rate of growth in businesses and employment, and not very advanced in its industries, mostly primary industries, raw materials, and agriculture. And then in 2006, held an election. Somebody from the private sector ran for governor of this province and said, elect me. I'm going to make things better. Now, they had heard this from every politician for the last 40 years, and whoever got elected didn't deliver. But this person really said, no, I'm really going to make this happen. And try to put in performance contracts in various ministries and with the senior employees there. And actually, many of these employees, public sector employees, did not think this was the greatest management idea that ever occurred. That they actually had to deliver performance that would be measurable and be accountable for it. Many public sector people, they like working there. Because we like jobs, not work. We like being employed, getting a paycheck, but not having to be accountable for delivering performance. But here's where leadership came in. He stuck to it, and he got them to adopt balanced scorecards across all the ministries. 4 years later, he gets reelected. Why does he get reelected? In 4 years, the population, for the first time in 25 years, is starting to increase, not decrease. During the previous 4 years, it had the highest growth rate in the regional GDP in the nation, doubling the national average. Fastest increase in exports out of that province. A shift to more value-added industries rather than primary sector industries. New businesses coming in, new tourism coming in. Think about that. What was different in 2010 than 2006? Same population, same region, same mountains and rivers, mostly the same population, and mostly the same economies. So what changed? What could possibly account for this kind of change in 4 years? One person. One person who had a vision of how much better this province could be, and a set of management tools to put that vision into action. So this can be done, and it has been done, and kind of very inspirational to me, gratifying, that our management tool can play a role like this to help visionary leaders succeed. So part of the magic here, is not just that we have the measures and the KPIs, but what flows from that. One of the things that flows from that are initiatives. Which are the initiatives which will have the biggest impact in moving the needle on our key performance indicators? There's always hundreds and thousands of initiatives. There was no shortage of proposals for how to spend money. That's not a problem. Which initiatives are we going to do? Which are the ones that we're going to fund? And the answer, of course, should be obvious, if difficult to implement. We should fund those initiatives that have the biggest impact in making our strategy successful. That's the answer. And the reason this hasn't worked in the past is we've done initiatives without a strategic framework. Each initiative is taken on its own, based on the numbers and some financial payback or the persuasion of the individual who proposed the initiative. We didn't distinguish between operational initiatives, doing business as normal, versus strategic initiatives, which are building the capabilities for dramatic change. There was a lack of initiative management. No integrated view of how all these initiatives flow together. You just manage each initiative on its own and not as an integrated package. So what do we mean? What do I mean by strategic initiative? Is that it can be directly linked with a clear line of sight to the organization's strategy. And if the initiative is implemented successfully, it will move the needle on at least one of the strategic KPIs you are developing. And if it can't do that, it's not a strategic initiative, and it probably shouldn't be funded. The initiatives that are the most strategic actually can cut across organizational boundaries. Imagine having an initiative that involves several ministries at once. Because society's problems are not organized the way you've organized the government. And so a big problem like unemployment or pollution can't be solved by any one ministry. That's what may require collaboration across ministries and perhaps initiatives that cut across multiple ministries. And this should truly be transformational. It gives you entirely new capabilities that you didn't have before. Often the payback can be longer, but the payback is going to be made on non-financial KPI, improved employability of people, better educated people, better transportation. So, the KPIs and moving the KPIs are going to be the success factor for the initiative. And there are lots of initiatives, but we can start to screen them. And this shows a 2x2 diagram as we look across dozens or hundreds of possible initiatives, vertical axis, which ones are going to have the biggest impact on our strategy, on KPI or more, which are the riskiest, or which are actually obvious. So the ones on the right are relatively easy to do and lowest risk and lowest cost. And so the upper right-hand box is clear. I mean, if your initiatives have a big impact on strategic KPI, not that costly, for sure we should do that. The less intuitive is the second tier. We should also be going after some of the high-impact strategic initiatives, which will take longer to do, somewhat more expensive, and may be complex in terms of organizational boundaries. This gives us at least a coherent, consistent framework for thinking about which among the thousands of initiatives that are being proposed we should select, because we do have only limited funding. And if you're working with themes, and themes are some of your key areas, we can actually group initiatives within one of these themes or focus areas. So, private-public partnership is a big theme. Job creation is a big theme. Government value for the money and responsiveness is a big theme. And so we might group together 8 or 10 initiatives that are all focused on advancing our performance in those key themes, not just do initiatives one at a time. And we found in our work, working with hundreds of organizations, and we're not the only ones, that being better at selecting initiatives, defining what the criteria are and the priorities, selecting those that will have the biggest impact per unit of spending, and then monitoring and integrating them and managing them is going to give you tremendous payoff. And this is really the intersection between strategy management and the project performance of the PMO, Project Management Office, that we need the strategy process up front to decide which are the most important initiatives, to select them and make sure they're funded adequately. And we need the Project Management Office to actually go forward and implement them, bring them in on time, on budget, and so they'll have the desired strategic impact. So again, another great linkage between strategy and execution through these projects. And then finally, we get to the fourth barrier that I talked about earlier, the lack of management attention during the year on strategy. Management, does have lots of things to take care of, and so we still need to have operational meetings and dashboards that keep us telling how things are going, where we can get better, where defects have occurred, and improve our underlying processes and make them better, faster, cheaper. But this is not the strategy. So you still need to do this, but we have to institute new strategy review meetings, monthly or quarterly. Now the question is, what do you talk about when we have a strategy review meeting? 10 years ago, you could have called a meeting, and you wouldn't have had anything to talk about. You're going to go back and read the 50 pages in the strategy document and have another discussion. Not a very interesting meeting. But if you're getting data on these strategy KPIs every month, or every quarter, then the management gets together and can look at it and see how we're doing. Where we succeed and where we fall short. Why did this occur? What could we do about it? Now, if you look at this, you'll see that on this strategy map, which is a way of representing the key performance indicators, some are green, some are yellow, means we're falling a little short of target, some are red. We're way short of target. Now, this is surprising in many organizations because we've been trained. You don't ever want to be red. You don't ever want to have a shortfall in performance. Or to paraphrase the peace movement in the 1950s, where we said, I'd rather be red, communists than dead. Most people said, I'd rather be dead than red. Show up with a shortfall. This is the old management culture. We get beat up and blamed for falling short on performance. But if the targets you've established with the KPIs that you're now creating, if they're always in the green zone, there's only two explanations for why your scorecard or dashboard is always green. One is that you've chosen targets that are too easy to achieve. You're not stretching. You're not trying to get breakthroughs in performance because you don't want to get beat up if you fall short. Well, this is not good. We want you to stretch and get breakthroughs in performance, recognizing that in a volatile, dynamic world, we can't always achieve it. But let's use the shortfall to learn about it. I might say the other reason why they're always green is people are lying about the data. They know there's a shortfall, but I don't want to tell them. And this is a big mistake. I said this morning with one of the military ministries, I told them the story that at one of our conferences, there was a military person who, at this point of the talk, raised his hand. And he said, there's a sign on my general's desk. And he said, the only thing that's worse than bad news is bad news late. When you go into battle, every general always has reserves. But if the people at the front lines where they're having a problem are afraid to tell the general that there's a problem, the general will eventually learn about it and is captured by the enemy that's broken through. If you knew about it in advance, he could commit his reserves and solve the problem. So having a culture where we're afraid to tell bad news is not a culture where we can learn and improve and reallocate resources. And the strategy review meetings is what keeps the strategy alive. We're continuing to monitor. And we don't want to make it fearful. We want to get the truth. We want one version of the truth. And we want people that can act on it and make it better. So I hope these give you a little bit of framework for the journey that we're now launched on, but it's tremendously exciting. I might say from the perspective of the United States, obviously Saudi Arabia is a very important country and a very challenging part of the world. So we care about your success. We want you to be successful on this journey, and we're going to try to help. So thank you very much.
You mentioned something among the interesting things we have learned today. It's scary to know how much strategy fails when execution is disconnected, when there's no buy-in, it's not communicated properly. I just have to say a quick thing before I open the discussion is we are truly privileged to have with us here the team that is not only developing the strategy, but the team that is translating the strategy into an execution plan. And I would like to tell you that we are, and our data center or the delivery unit of data centers are there to offer you whatever support needed to make the execution possible, to challenge the KPIs, to challenge the plans. The more you utilize us, the more we are able to enable you to reach a connection or bridge the gap between the strategy and the execution plan, is the more we serve the country. This is truly an historical time in Saudi Arabia. I mean, we look at this team, this is it. This is the team that goes back to their organizations and look at how we can develop a balanced score system to have a better control in our execution. How can we push our initiatives to be a little bit more aggressive, more ambitious? So we are there, we are here to offer you any resources we need. If we look 10 years or 20 years down the road, we will look at this team as the team that made it, the team that made the transformation possible. So please allow us to help you to get there. Again, thank you, Dr. Kaplan. We'd love also to have access to this material and we'll share it with the team or with the participants. This is the time you can ask questions. Feel free to ask them in Arabic or English. We have got about 20 minutes.
10, 5.
I'm going to escape.
So we'll call the airport.
So 5 to 10 minutes.
I'll be about 6 o'clock.
I think I aligned with the team. We can go a bit maybe from up to 10, 15 minutes.
10 minutes.
We'll make sure you get to the airport safely and on time. Safely being there first. So please, I'd like all of my team members to help in maybe passing the mic around. Please ask questions, be critical.
Thank you, first of all, Dr. Kaplan, for a very informative presentation. My question is, how do you deal with resistance from the organization for implementing such a tool?
Yeah, so the question is how do you deal with resistance within the organization? Yeah, so I haven't given all the tools we have, but I think the communication is really important. So they understand why do we have to change? Why a continuation of the status quo will not be acceptable. And they have to understand that. It's not that they've done anything wrong, it's just the demands of the world and the citizens are changing. And this is part of the change. And we have to indicate what we're changing to, and that we do have a vision. But another part of this is actually the leadership. I mean, if the leadership is not articulating this, it's going to look like the flavor of the month. You know, we've heard this before. This is something that if we just sit tight, it will go away like everything else. And so this is really why leadership is so important. They have to really be convinced that the leader is behind this and not only wants this to happen, he's going to try, he's really going to make it happen. And that's why I started with leadership and communication, because I think that really is the key to the resistance. And just helping and coaching the people along. So it seems feasible, it's not impossible.
Hi. Hey. Thank you, Victor, for your lecture. It was very wonderful. Almost the same with the first questions regarding the resistance. Even after the communication, still probably there is 5% or more or less, they resist the change, whatever we're doing with them. So what's the best, how we deal with these small amount of people?
Well, again, it's kind of the role for the leadership, and whether you have that discretion. At some point, you just say, we're going forward, and maybe it would be a good idea, since you don't seem to support us, that you find a different organization with which to pursue your career. Because you just can't spend, you're not going to spend 2 years arguing to get 100% approval. We're going forward, the train is leaving the station. We're not going that fast. We want you to get on board. But at some point, we're going. And you're either going to be with us or you're not. And that all, again, the leadership is required to make that quite explicit. And in many of the organizations we've had have been very successful. They were successful with a somewhat different composition, leadership team, than they were at the start of the journey.
Using just for example, one for the Marine Corporation and one for the Sun Corporation. I would like us to ask you just personally, do you consider this example will be applicable for Saudi society?
Well, I think the question is, can we generalize from the South Korea or the U.S. Marine Corps example to what would be successful within Saudi? I guess the correct and safe and true thing for you to say is, even though I've been in Saudi 6 or 8 different times, I would not say that I was an expert in the culture and traditions in the society. We have found that our approach that I described to you has worked in every geography where we've tried this. It may be implemented different ways of communicating and bringing people along into one example, but the basic mechanics of this we go through in any culture. How we deal with it, whether we'll have the right leadership and the right. I think obviously I've seen some tremendous leaders in Saudi, just as we've seen them everywhere else. And so there's more variation within the country than there is across countries, between countries. And so the goal is to find those people, like the Marine Corps officers, who lead by inspiration and motivation and communication. Because sometimes there are leaders who get their power by restricting access to information, and they hold power by having unique access to information. Those are not good leaders for this approach. We need leaders who are comfortable with sharing and communicating and learning from the organization. And I don't think that's a Saudi defect or a strength necessarily. It's just trying to identify those leaders within your society who have those capabilities. But there are barriers here that are unique to your country that you know about far better than I. And then I think you depend on the local leadership who do know that to understand what mechanisms should be introduced, maybe new mechanisms, so that this will work in Saudi culture, Saudi society.
We'll take the last questions, otherwise you have to pay a ticket. If you want to ask a question, you should take it.
I think maybe 5 minutes and we'll have it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaplan, for being with us. I think this is a great opportunity. We thank actually the EU and Palliative for this. My question is, from your deep and long experience and executing and cascading the strategies and as a creator of the balanced scorecard, for us, as launching a new experience and the change plan, for the whole country. I know that you might have lots of advices for us, but what would be the most 2 or 3 important advices that you would give us as a team?
Well, first is, you said this is the game. Right now, it's happening. I mean, you're going to be as part of the transformation from a pure resource-based economy to a more value-added economy, hiring jobs and new technologies. You have the advantage, change before you have to, of having a very strong resource base. But if all you do is treat it as a cash cow and don't make the investments in education, in infrastructure, in new value-added sectors, you will have wasted this time. So I think the sense of the time is right, and there is a sense of urgency. And the work you're doing is going to look day to day like it's really boring and detailed and through the measures. But it's part of a grand plan of the transformation of the Saudi economy to this knowledge-based economy, not just a purely resource-based economy. I mean, oil is not going to go away, but how do we make that transformation from almost 100% natural resource-based to much more of a knowledge-based and information-based economy? And that's the journey you're on. And so I think you have to just keep that in mind to break through the resistance, that why do we have to do this, to recognize I think that's what it is. So I guess that's the one piece of advice. I think right now this is the only game in the round.
to doing that transformation. And you're having some inspirational leadership, I think, from the very senior people in government, in positions of power that say, go forward with this. I want the sector to perform much better and to be, to help transform the economy and create great employment opportunities for the young, savvy people that we have. So you have a good alignment at the very senior parts of government level. You have ministers who are committed to this, so let's make it happen.
Thank you, Dr. Kaplan. One thing that makes us all, concluding, very nervous, sometimes the process is not clear. Sometimes there are culture impediments. Sometimes there is uncertainty. Sometimes there is our own interests in our own organizations. It's hard to look at cross-ministerial objectives and national challenges. I tend to believe, from learning from world-renowned authors and scientists like yourself, as it takes true change agents like the team that has been assigned to this progress or to this project to lead the change despite of the ambiguities that sometimes we come across, to almost to try to translate it, and even if it's not too clear, how can I still make it happen? How can I still embed it in my organization? It doesn't have to end at the project, it doesn't have to end in the 8 weeks. How can I introduce a little change here and there, even if I just infect the environment around me, my team, my department, my ministry, with this sense of change and sense of transformation? So, risk is always there, right?
Yeah. That's a great statement. It made me think of one little thing that I'll add to what I said before. Don't let the best be the enemy of the good. Now, I'm giving you a theory of what, don't try to get the perfect measure. Or spend, I'm going to wait 5 years till I get the perfect measure. None of the measures is perfect. At best, they're reasonable indicators. So I think what we have to do, this is what I'll reinforce the statement we just made, is let's do something that says 1 month from now, 90 days from now, we're better than we were before. We have some good indicators, we're doing better in selecting initiatives, and it's better than it was before. And just keep going. Because, we're not carving these measures into concrete. We can change them as we learn more. As we learn how to get better data, we'll do better. But don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Let's just get started, moving in that direction, measuring things, getting feedback, getting data, having strategy review meetings, selecting initiatives, setting priorities based on evidence and data. It's going to be better than not doing it. So even though, as you say, this seems hard to measure, and I'm not sure I have the right data, as long as we keep moving in the right direction, we'll get better at this. And over time, we'll change, and things will keep getting better.
Thank you, Dr. Kaplan. Truly all big hands for